Brigade. And they met in the Irish Brigade, me boys. And they met in the Irish Brigade. Oh Lord, that those cowardly Lincolnites tremble, oh, when they met at the Irish Brigade. Oh! You guys heard me singing, huh? Well, well, I guess since I was singing about the Irish, I guess I might as well start talking about the Irish Brigades. Both of the divisions in the Confederate Army and the Union Army. Now, I can hear you guys already. Templar, I never heard of this stuff in history books. There's no such thing. Well, here's the thing. You can't just always look up something in a history book. In fact, even Wikipedia has a little some knowledge of most of this information. In fact, the Irish Brigade of the times of the American Civil War were on both sides. Both on the Union version and the Confederate version, in which the song you were just hearing me sing. Now, if you guys don't understand why the Irish fought in the American Civil War, well, there are kind of major reasons. The massive immigration reason, especially with the potato famine and such, was one of the major majorities, but before that, it was also stated that the Irish came to America in order to get away from the British Crown, seen as though the British were kind of the cause and problems of the people in Ireland, in which most Irishmen ended up going to the north rather than the south. But many Irishmen in the north felt discriminated against just because of their religion. And in doing so, they went further south, and in doing so, they became part of the southern people. And as you guys guessed it, as soon as the American Civil War erupts, many of them view that the southern ideas are better. But the immigration in the north kept going on, because the blockade didn't affect the north, but it affected the south. So, you guess what might happen? Well, that's correct. Many of those northerners now had new soldiers from foreign countries, and most of them were the Irish. And in fact, the Irish the regiments, or brigades, or whatever you want to pronounce them as, were always famous on the battlefield, especially with the shamrock-colored flag of the Union. The shamrock-colored flag of the Union was actually probably the most beautiful type of green flag you can ever see, and the Irish Brigade of the Union would actually carry it through on the battlefield. And pretty much this is actually remembered in the movie, and this is a historically accurate movie made with reenactors. It has both in the movie Gettysburg and in the movie Gods and Generals, in which both have the same divisions in the battlefield. Now I can hear you guys already. Templar, what actually happened to the Irish Brigades? Well, it was actually stated on the winters of on the Fredericksburg field of the First Battle of Fredericksburg, I should say. It's actually stated that both the Irish brigades of both the Confederacy and Union faced each other on the battlefield. Now, upon doing so, both sides actually fought back, and in doing so they knew the difference. They knew who was who. And pretty much the reason they knew of the Irish Brigade in each group was not just because of the flag, but as well because of a type of, well, I guess you might say, type of green leaves that they held inside their, well, caps. And in fact, it's actually stated that this type of, well, green leaf was actually a symbol of their homeland in Ireland. And in doing so, gave them bravery on the field of battle. Sad to say, though, that many times the Irish Brigade was actually still probably the bravest in history books, in which many parts of their history is left out in history. Now, the Irish Brigade of the Confederate Army had the regular Confederate national flag, except with it had the harp of Ireland. In other words, if you were to take a look at the old Irish flag of the Republic, it would have a green background with a golden harp. Well, golden harp in the Confederacy, and for the Irish in the Union Army, it was, well, a shamrock flag. Now, the volunteers of both sides actually viewed different ideas. One actually viewed that the idealism of freedom and liberty. But as well, it's also stated for the Irish, they're fighting for their independence. And pretty much, you could see why. They didn't like to discriminate being, well, picked on just because of their religion. In fact, in the South, there were many Catholics, Protestants, and they were living side by side. In the North, there were Protestants mostly. Now this was actually the messed up part. After the war had fully ended, the Irish Brigades were looked at as, well, idiots, drunks, and such. And in fact, it was even stated that many of the Union soldiers that were Irish were actually, well, discriminated against again, just because they were Irish and that they were Catholic. Now, that was very messed up, in which many of them either went west, south, or back home to Ireland. But even there, they didn't find any, well, home. In fact, some of them even went north into Canada, where they were truly welcomed. In which sometimes they even went into the areas of Nova Scotia or further on into Canada. We do not know. But it is stated that the Irish Brigades fought against each other more times than one, such as the Battle of Fredericksburg, the First Battle of Fredericksburg, and as well the Battle of Gettysburg, in which many of them actually, well, were saddened by the loss of fighting against their own brothers. In fact, many of them actually came on the boat from, well, from Ireland, and yet they're now fighting against each other again. But as well, many of them even that did go to Ireland, in the process, actually fought back against the British government in the late 1800s, and which would later spark the wars for Irish independence. And now you guys might also wonder, Templar, if this actually happened, why is it never recorded in history books? Well, the thing is, it was. Now that's a footnote. It's no longer put in the major majorities of a history book. So you can see why that many times when you look at an American government, it does not help out in any other countries. Now I could also hear you guys already. Templar, I want to learn more about the Irish Brigades. Where can I find more history about them? Well, you can find mostly a lot of history about them in different sites as soon as you look them up. Problem is, though, most sites do not have the information. Now, it is stated, though, that both sides actually had different divisions of the Irish Brigade. But the two divisions were known as the Harp Brigade of the Confederacy and the Shamrock Division of the Union. And it's stated that these two actually fought against each other more than once on the type of field of battle in the eastern front of the American Civil War, such as in Virginia, Maryland, or including in Pennsylvania. Though, as we can also tell, when it came to the end of the war, many hundreds of thousands of Irishmen were either killed, slaughtered, imprisoned, or died from their wounds. Now, many people do not realize, though, that the American Civil War actually left its toll on many countries, and many people that came from foreign countries thought to find a better life here, and in doing so, they had to fight for that better life. The Irish were not one of those that found a better life. But you could see the point of this war, of what it affected the entire world. Now, if you think of Civil War, you think it only affects the region. But in truth, it affects the entire world. Especially since many of those other countries actually already had people that have immigrated to the country. In fact, there was even a so-called saying from an Irishman who actually held his baby brother in his hands and was fighting against them in the war. He was part of the Shamrock Division, while his baby brother was part of the Harp Division. He held his brother in his hands and watched the light fade from his eyes. The cold, whispering wind then blew upon his cheeks, and all of Ireland made a cry of sadness that day. Now this letter later on became a poem, and later on a very sad song in Irish history. And in fact, many Irishmen actually view it as an idea that we were always being forced to fight against each other when we should be united as a whole Ireland. Which, as I stated, would actually bring a form of history right back to the beginning of the Irish independence movement. But I'll get that at some other time, probably sometime in March, or April, give or take. But yes, guys, the Irish Brigades of the American Civil War may have been forgotten, but they will never truly be forgotten. It's only when we start to remember history is when we start to look at the past. And the Irish Brigade are probably the most forgotten of the branches of the American Civil War. Because when people say, remember the divisions that were African American. Remember the divisions that were Hispanic, Native American. Well, here's the thing. None of them cry out for the ones that were Irish, and which took the most losses in the American Civil War. And were never actually from the United States, but were actually born in Ireland, and actually came here to the United States to find a better life. But as well, many of them, that the Irish, the Brigades, both in the Union and the Confederacy, if they were captured on the field of battle, such as in the Union Army, guess what's going to happen to them? They would have been treated very poorly, and as well would have even been forced to eat, well, not eat, but eat rats, mice, anything that could move, because the Union Army didn't treat their prisoners well. I'll talk that some other time, with the Confederate Holocaust. But for the Union Army, with their Irish division, if they were captured, the Confederates tried to treat them and nourish them, but with the blockade, the Confederate Army didn't get that much resources, and many of the Irish, and including Union troops, died. But I'll get to that some other time. Anyways, guys, if you guys liked this video, let me know in the comments below. If you guys want me to talk about anything about this history of the American Civil War, let me also know that in the comments below. Like this video, subscribe, and as well click that bell button for more of these videos. Anyways, guys, this has been Templar. Have a good day.